Thank you for listening to the Spectrum Lounge. If you enjoy this podcast, please support us at patreon.com/filmfatale_NYC. And be sure to subscribe to the Spectrum Lounge. You can find us on SoundCloud, Apple, Spotify, and YouTube. Welcome to the Spectrum Lounge podcast, where we discuss creatives of color disrupting the game in TV, film, and pop culture. I am your host, Rebecca Theodore-Vachon, and on this episode, I'm joined by Robert Young as we review episodes 1 and 2 of the Disney Plus original series, Hawkeye. Hey, Robert.
Hey, I'm kind of surprised to be back for this one.
I know. I mean, I think, so we've done recaps of Falcon and the Winter Soldier, Loki, What If, and I think the last recap we did of What If, we're not really sure if we're going to come back for Hawkeye. Let's see. Because I think for both of us, the interest in Hawkeye was like,
Yeah.
And then we saw the trailer that came out a few weeks after that, and I was like, okay.
This might be all right.
This might be okay. And so we finally, episodes 1 and 2 dropped on Thanksgiving Eve, the Wednesday before Thanksgiving. So I guess we'll kick things off, Robert. What were your initial thoughts of episodes 1 and 2 of Hawkeye?
Surprisingly, I really liked it. I didn't go in with a bad, attitude about it. I just kind of wanted to give it its space and see how it was, but it gives me that Die Hard, Lethal Weapon, holiday, crime fighting vibe, and it's kind of perfect for that.
Right. Yeah, I was very pleasantly surprised at how much I liked the show. I was just like, what's going on here?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And yeah, like you said, I actually like the fact that it is it's based in New York City. And it is around the holidays. We're understanding it's a few days before Christmas. And I'm based in LA right now. I'm doing some consulting work in LA. And so watching those first 2 episodes, I can't believe I'm actually saying this. I actually was homesick.
You miss it?
I was like, wait a minute, what's going on here? And, everyone knows me. Born and raised in New York, can't stand New York, which is why I'm, looking to make the move to LA. But I will say that there is something very special about New York City during Christmas time, during the holidays. It is very magical. And I think the show definitely nails that. And I also appreciate the fact that this is actually shot in New York City, because I cannot stand movies and TV shows that claim to be shot in New York. Really tell that they're not shot in New York, because real New Yorkers, we know, we have an eye for that.
Right.
So I was just like, oh yeah, that's 45th Street. Oh, that's by Rockefeller Center. Oh, that's Broadway. So yeah, they were definitely on the mark in shooting this series in New York. Maybe what we can do is to kind of contextualize our review, or just talking about Hawkeye. I feel like maybe we need to go back to the beginning, right? And you can kind of let me know what you feel, because I have a feeling that this series, just really quickly, as far as, and I was just talking to a friend of mine about this, I think what's been so brilliant about Marvel coming out with these series, right, is really a way to kick off phase 4, because we know that, phase 1 through 3, was what I call the OG Avengers, right? Captain America, Iron Man, Black Widow, the Hulk, Hawkeye. Most of them are gone now. Scarlett, made her swan song in Endgame, and, although she came back for Black Widow. Chris Evans is gone as Captain America. Tony Stark, no longer Iron Man. And so phase 4 is really about passing the baton, right?
Yes.
From the OGs to these newer versions, or these people that will be stepping into their place. And I think it's really smart to do a series, as opposed to, for instance, just making an Avengers movie where it's Clint Barton retired from Hawkeye, and here's this, really cute 22-year-old girl that's going to replace him. There's not going to be a connection with the audience, I think, because we've invested, like you said, we've invested so much time in getting to know the OG Avengers, so to speak, or the
Right.
OG MCU. I think when you have a series, 6 hours, 7 hours, it gives you time not only to kind of say goodbye to the original, but it also makes the audience understand the new person that is stepping in.
Yeah, it gives you some time to bond with that new person.
Mhm, mhm. So let's talk about Hawkeye and kind of like his place in the MCU. If I remember correctly, he was first introduced in Avengers.
Thor 1. Thor 1.
It was Thor.
Yeah,
Okay.
he was in the first Thor, yep.
Yes. Okay. And then, oh yes, you're right, because he was over. Okay, so we were introduced to Jeremy Renner. Was a cameo appearance in Thor, and then we really got to see more of him in the first Avengers movie.
Yep.
Um, what have been your feelings and thoughts about uh, Clint?
Hawkeye?
Yeah, Clint and Hawkeye, and kind of like their evolution in place.
It's interesting because, like, as far as the MCU goes, he's my I wouldn't say least favorite, but he's the Avenger that I never, you know,
Mhm.
least popular for me,
Yeah.
you know?
Mhm.
Whereas growing up reading the comics, the Avengers, Hawkeye was like one of my favorite characters because of his interactions with Mockingbird
Mhm.
on the Avengers. So, but yeah, I mean, the character's fine. I mean, the only reason I pay any attention to him is because of his relationship with Black Widow.
Mm.
Because Black Widow, because of Winter Soldier, of course, is like one of the characters I appreciate more.
Mhm.
I mean, she's been used in bad ways in several of the Avengers movies, but the character is so good in the Winter Soldier that I kind of like took to the character in that movie, and her relationship with Hawkeye is pretty. It's one of the more important relationships as far as Avengers go in the
Mhm.
MCU, and it's one of the more realistic ones too.
Yeah, no, I agree. When I think about Hawkeye, there's the funny thing with like Marvel and DC, there's always mirror reflections of certain characters, right? Like
Hmm.
Hawkeye on the Marvel side, and then you have Green Arrow who's on the DC side. So, I mean, people can debate who's the better archer. But I've always felt that, like, uh, in Avengers, he is taken over by Loki. He's brainwashed, so to speak. He's under mind control by Loki, and he does some terrible things
Hmm.
against his will. And then, once he's released from Loki's hold, and then there's the huge fight in New York City where they fight the Shatari and Loki. We really got to see his archery skills. You know what I mean? Well, we saw
Right.
it too when he was evil Hawkeye or whatever. But I love that scene, the one where he's like taking on the Shatari from the building, from the top building, and it's just like his archery skills are just ridiculous. And I'm just
Yeah.
like, how do you know? I'm always thinking like, how do you know which arrow to pull out? You know, it's very intuitive. It's like, okay, this arrow is gonna shoot, webbing. This arrow is gonna shoot a bomb or something. So I'm always like, damn, how does he know which one to? But I'm sure there's some mechanism that where he can control that and
Yeah.
everything. So yeah, I do feel like it's interesting that you mentioned that the thing with Hawkeye. Now that I'm thinking about it, is that throughout his run in the MCU, the one thing that I will say about him is that he is that character that has relationships, platonic relationships with women characters and supports them, right?
That's
So,
right, because
right,
Scarlet Witch and him have a good relationship too, right?
exactly. Yeah. So we start with Black Widow with Natasha. We know they have a very long standing relationship. So much so, like their friendship is so deep that in Age of Ultron, when we met Clint's family, his wife was pregnant, and they actually ended up calling the baby. It was a boy, and they called him Nathaniel
Hmm.
and that, which is really a play on Natasha. And she is the godmother to that child. So we understand. And also the wife was really good friends with Black Widow. So we understand that Clint and Natasha have this very strong platonic relationship.
Yeah,
And I think that's the one thing that that the MCU has done well, also reflected with Steve and Natasha, is
for sure.
this idea of men having healthy platonic relationships with women, and treating these women and advocating for these women,
Mhm.
which I think is really beautiful. And so, yeah, and so when we went into Age of Ultron, we kind of saw that in the way that he mentored, Scarlet Witch with Wanda. He was kind of keeping an eye on her and kind of helped her come over to the good side, so to speak, in Age of Ultron. And now we're seeing this same kind of
With Kate.
with Kate. You know what I mean? And I think that part of that is because of the fact that Clint is a girl dad, and throughout
Yeah.
episodes we are seeing scenes of him and his daughter. I'm forgetting what his daughter's name is, but we do understand that he and his daughter have a really beautiful father-daughter relationship, and I do think that that is kind of, as alpha male and as tough as Clint is, like his relationship with women platonically and even with his wife, he has a lot of respect for women, a lot of respect for women. So I've always liked his character for that.
Yeah, and when you think about it, I mean, their scene in, uh, Endgame is,
Mm-hmm.
like, one of the most powerful scenes in the whole 10 years. Like, when his daughter disappears,
Oh,
turns to dust.
yeah, yeah,
So, yeah.
yeah. It's true, and so and it's interesting too because when we were watching that first scene in Endgame where he was teaching his daughter archery, I was like, is that like an Easter egg? Like, are y'all telling us that she's going to be the next Hawkeye? But I mean,
Yeah.
that Kate Bishop was coming down the pike, but I do feel that his daughter is going to play an important part in the MCU. I'm not sure how, but the fact that we keep seeing them together, I was just like, I think they have plans for her. I mean, Kate
I
Bishop,
agree because she's, like, the one of the kids that has the most talking parts.
yes, and common sense.
Mhm, yeah, yeah.
That's very interesting that you said that. It's like the boys are
You
kind of
barely see them.
yeah, the relationship with him and his daughter are highly, and I think it kind of juxtaposes with his relationship with Kate. There's very much like a
For sure.
yeah, yeah, that's very true. So, so let's first talk about this opening scene in
Woo!
Hawkeye, because you and I were talking about, and you tweeted about this, about how you can tell me what it was you tweeted about that opening scene and the overall view of
Yeah. I
it.
was saying, like, this is, like, the mega accomplishment of the MCU. Like, this 10 years of movies has given us this shorthand where they can show you this little clip from the Battle of New York from Avengers, and
Mhm.
everybody's seen it, and they're like, "Oh, yeah," and now we're getting to see the other side of it when we get to see across the street,
Mhm.
Kate as a little girl seeing Hawkeye fighting the Chitauri.
Right. That was amazing. Like the way that they used the clips from Avengers.
It's amazing.
And then, because I think there was a little bit of CGI when they showed Hawkeye. I mean, there was actual footage of him from the Avengers, and I think there's one scene where they might have just to make him look a little bit younger, I think.
Mhm.
But I was just sort of like, yo, I love that introduction. It's not like, oh, she's just some random person. It's like, no, we have to connect her into this universe and what does it
Right.
look like? And yeah, I mean, we saw the Avengers. There was a lot of collateral damage in that, in that fight scene, but we didn't really hear about it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and now
Like,
we're getting to see it firsthand.
we're saying, and I think that's what's so cool about the MCU is that there's like this panoramic view of,
Mhm.
because remember, like phases 1 through 3, we have been seeing it through the eyes of the superheroes, right? We've been seeing it through the eyes of the Avengers, which short cord, we're looking through the eyes of privilege. Let's say,
Right,
put it that way. And now
right.
by kind of double backing, by kind of reversing and making and kind of putting the camera on the ground, right? And kind of
Mhm.
seeing like what these human consequences look like. Like they had already been doing this in the movie, like with Civil War, when Tony was confronted by Alfred Woodard's character by the elevator and was like, "Oh, by the way, when you guys had that super duper huge fight in Age of Ultron and, leveled Sokovia, by the way, my son was a volunteer there and he died." Right?
Yeah, and we got it again in the first Spider-Man with the Vulture.
There you go. There you go.
Yeah.
And I find that so fascinating that for some people, while we may look at them as these heroes as angels, there are other people who feel very differently. They may not be flat
Mhm.
out villains, right? But they're just sort of like, yeah, I don't think you guys have done as much good as you think you have. You
Exactly.
know? And I think that it's a gift that they are kind of doing that, because I mean, and even to an extent, we did kind of see it, like even with the Netflix Marvel movies, like with Luke Cage, Jessica Jones, Iron Fist, and Daredevil, that
Mhm.
there was sort of like that grounded vision or the look, right? Because remember in those shows they called it the event or the
The
event,
event.
right? So we knew this was post Avengers, right?
Yep.
And that was kind of a call for these more grounded heroes like Luke Cage and Jessica and Daredevil to step up, because yes, while the Avengers, defeated the big bad in the Shatari and Loki, you've got these everyday evils, right?
Yeah.
They don't you know what I mean, like the single mother that's going to get evicted from her apartment, and that's where someone like Matt Murdock comes in, where he's advocating for the less privileged, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Same with Jessica Jones, same with Luke, particularly Luke being a black superhero. He's sort of the protector of Harlem, you know what
Mhm.
I mean? And that even within black spaces, there's violence that we are enacting on each other, you know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Yeah.
So yeah, so I really was kind of surprised by that opening scene, because I was like, okay, so how are they going to start this show again? Like, how are they going to connect, Kate to Hawkeye? So I really like that. So let's talk about the casting. So before we get into the episode, let's talk about the casting, because a couple of years ago they did announce that Hailee Steinfeld would be playing Kate Bishop, and I have to tell you, Robert, I love her in this role. I'm not very familiar with the Kate Bishop character. I mean, I know of her. I've read about her. I haven't really read the comics, but there's just something about Hailee. She has this sweetness, but sort of like a sarcasm, but it's not
Uh-huh.
sarcasm, right? Um,
Yeah.
and she's wonderful. And like, I immediately fell in love with her. I was just like, yep, I want her to be the new Hawkeye. Yeah. You know what I mean? And that is really a testament to the casting. Shout out to Sarah Finn. She is sort of like the casting director for all of the Marvel
TV show.
properties.
Okay.
Yeah. What
Yeah,
did you think of Hailee?
I think she is perfect for the role. The interesting thing is, I mean, I've heard the name before. I've heard her name before. I'm sure I've seen her and stuff before, but
Mhm.
I've never really paid attention to this actress before.
Right.
But I do know Kate Bishop. I've read a lot of Kate Bishop in the comics, and she is perfect for the
Mhm.
role. Like,
She
I guess at this point, I'm not surprised when they nail casting.
It's
Um,
like, "Oh, you did it again.
but
Okay."
she is perfect. You are right. She's got just enough of the sweetness, but
Mhm,
she's got the sarcasm.
mhm,
She's got like that drive.
mhm.
Uh, yeah, she's really good, and she's really charismatic.
Very, very.
Like I could easily see her being one of the more prominent heroes in Phase 4.
Wow. Yeah, I agree. She's because I knew Haley was in True Grit, that remake of True Grit. She was like 10 or 11. Like she was
Oh
young.
wow, wow.
So, and then she's been in the, oh God, it was it was that franchise, the one with Anna Kendrick where they were singing. She was,
Oh
you
yeah,
know what I'm talking about.
yeah. I do.
The
I
title of the,
can't think of it.
yeah. And so, yeah, so she was in those movies. And then she has a Apple Plus series where she plays Emily Dickinson.
Oh wow.
Yeah. And then she's also in, I'm trying to think. Oh, this is how you know her, Robert. She's the one who voiced Spider Gwen in Into the Spider Verse.
Oh, okay, okay, okay.
Oh, Pitch Perfect. That's the movie that she was in.
Yeah, yep. That's a series.
So she's very talented. Not only can she sing, act, she can sing too. And I just like her. And I think it could be me, but I think one of the other reasons why I like Kate Bishop, because here's the thing: we understand that her character is privileged. She does come from money.
Hmm.
She comes from a wealthy family. But what I like about Kate is that she does not give me any Karen vibes, and I
Yeah, true.
you know what I mean? I just have zero, you know, patience for white women characters like that. But
Well, we kind of got to see that in that scene where she shoots the bell tower and her two, uh, the black girls that were her friends that
yes,
were like kind of like pushing her on.
hmm.
Yeah.
And so she's just she doesn't annoy me because sometimes younger white women characters can annoy the hell out of me. But
Yeah, I hear you on that.
yeah, but Hailee does not do that. So I was like, thank God. Although I did read somewhere that Hailee, she is of African American descent, like her grandfather
Oh,
was.
really?
Yeah, I mean, she does not identify as mixed race or anything. Like
Hmm.
she's not doing that. But I mean, she's very open about her lineage. So I'm wondering if maybe that has something to do with it. Why she
and
doesn't bother me so much.
and her and Jeremy Renner have good chemistry.
Very much so. They're really, really cute. Because I kind of like this. She's kind of like this adoring fan. Like she's like, oh my God, Hawkeye. You know what I mean? And
And he's annoyed.
yes, and he's kind of like, oh Lord. Because in the flashback, so let's talk about the opening scene.
Hmm.
You can kick it off. So let us know how the episode starts and how it ties into the Avengers.
Well, I mean, it's basically we get to see Kate and her relationship with her dad.
Mhm.
She's in the apartment with her mom and dad. Um, Her mom and her are kind of having like a little, I wouldn't say argument, but she's kind of ignoring her mom in the kitchen, and her dad comes home, and of course she's like, it's obvious she's daddy's little girl, and
Mhm.
she uh she was their parents got in the fight. She's listening to them from the bedroom. They
Mhm.
hear her getting up on her dresser, so her mom sends her dad in because,
Mhm.
dad's her favorite, so he's got to go in and talk to her.
Right.
So it was kind of good to see, how close she was with her dad. And then we have the whole, her dad goes upstairs to get something, I think.
Yes. Mhm.
And then her and her mom, she meets her mom in the kitchen. Her mom goes downstairs to go get something because they're going to play checkers.
Mhm.
And then that's when we start hearing the explosions and stuff outside from the Chitauri fighting,
Wow. Yeah.
and gets a whole wall blown away in the apartment, and Kate can see outside, but now both of her parents are in like different parts of the house, and she's kind of freaking out seeing this.
Mhm. Yeah, that was so Kate's mother is Eleanor Bishop. She's played by Vera Farmiga. She'll look very familiar to you. She is from the Conjuring uh, franchise, and she also, I believe, she played the mother in Bates Motel, right? The
Yeah,
series that was kind of
yeah.
like the origin story of Norman Bates. Now, here's the thing, Robert. So here's some observations that I want to throw at you, and you let me know.
Okay.
So this opening scene between Kate's parents, the argument was very specific, right? In the fact that we understand that one, visually we can see that these people that Kate comes from a very privileged family, so it's
Hmm.
sort of like a penthouse, so to speak, right? A 2-level, 3-level penthouse.
Yeah.
The fight that Kate's parents were having was over money.
Right. It's almost like they had lost something and he's gonna have to sell the apartment.
Exactly. So one, we're understanding that her parents are having some friction due to money. And what we also find out is that it is Kate's father's who has the money, right? Or at least his side of the family
Hmm.
has the money.
Yeah.
And Kate's mother is more from humble beginnings. She's not the one. She married into money. You know what I
Right.
mean? I'm not saying she's a gold digger or anything, but we kind of understand what the power dynamic in this family is. Here's the thing. I think there was a specific agenda as to why they chose this specific scene to open to open Hawkeye. I think
I
what
agree.
they're trying to telegraph and trying to tell us something about the Eleanor Bishop character. Here's my
Hmm.
theory. I mean, we'll talk about the rest of the episode, but before I forget, I think that Eleanor Bishop is the big bad of this movie, of this series.
Oh, that
Because
would not surprise me,
yeah,
to be honest.
because I'm like, listen, Vera Farmiga is that chick. Okay, she's one of the
Mhm.
best actresses in Hollywood. There is no way that Disney would just cast her to play the doting mother or the worried mother. There's
Yeah, I
something
agree.
at work here, and particularly because of the fact that they fought about money before this, right? So we understand that they were in some sort of financial crisis.
Mhm.
Then we see, there's a funeral, and then if, fast forwards to when Kate is an adult, when we see them in present day, they're doing really, really well. Like now, the mother is the head of what is it, Bishop Securities, and so
Yeah, security company.
yeah, so she's sort of like this badass, CEO. That's not what we saw in the beginning of Hawkeye in the Flash.
Mhm.
Are you understanding what I'm saying?
Yeah, exactly. I understand exactly what you're saying, and I think you're right.
Yeah, so I'm like, okay, so I'm kind of putting things together. I'm like, okay, you didn't come from money. Okay, you're fighting with your husband about money. Okay, then your husband dies tragically in this event, and now like you're big bossing.
You're
you're
big bossing and you're marrying into money again
There you go.
because she just got engaged to another rich man.
Right, and failed to tell your daughter that you were getting that you because we find out in the episode that Kate was like the last one to know. She goes to when they
Mhm.
go to that holiday party. People are congratulating her like, "Oh yeah, the wedding," and she's like, "What wedding?" She was like, "Yeah, your mom got engaged." And I'm like, "What kind of mother fails to tell her daughter that she's getting engaged?" So I'm just looking at Eleanor Bishop, and all I'm saying is that keep your eye on her.
Yeah.
There's going to be some sort of reveal about Eleanor Bishop that I don't think we're ready for. And I think that is why they cast Vera Farmiga. The same way you would cast a heavy hitter like Julia Louis-Dreyfus to play Madame Hydra.
Yeah, or, the woman that played Agatha in
Mm-hmm.
WandaVision, right?
Yeah, I was just like, hold on, y'all are not going to cast this just so she's playing the nosy neighbor. So by the reveal that she was Agatha, like we started realizing that there was more to her that meets the eye. So I
Mhm.
think the same way, that's perfect example. That same sort of twist in WandaVision, I think we're going to get that same twist in Hawkeye. I
Yeah, I think you're right.
And can you imagine? Because the thing is, like we said, these series are really to establish these characters, right? So this series, as much as it is about Clint sort of handing the baton over to Kate, this is also Kate's superhero origin story. So we're
Mhm.
starting with the idea that her father was killed during the events of the Avengers. Okay, that's a kind of good motivation, but I feel like you got to put it a little bit over the top. So imagine an origin story where your own nemesis is your own mama.
Would this be the first character that had mother issues in the MCU?
No. Most of them have daddy issues.
Right. That's what I was thinking.
So this is definitely a twist on where that, and that's an excellent point. Like now, if things turn out the way that we're theorizing, if Eleanor is indeed going to turn out to be the big bad, I'm just sort of like, wow. Like imagine where you have to take down your own mom. Like what does that look like?
Whew.
I'm just saying. That's a hell of an
Uh,
origin story.
I think you're right, though. I think you're right.
Yeah. So we'll put a pin in that. We're gonna see how the rest of the episodes pan out. But so anyway, we switch from Kate. So we understand with the opening montage, after the funeral, Kate goes on to be like this martial art, like she's winning, she's training in martial arts. She becomes an archer because she actually in the flashback she sees Hawkeye take down the Shatari. And at the funeral, when her mother was like, anything you need, whatever. And she was like, I think she said she wants a bow and arrow. Is that what she?
Yeah, she's like, I need a bow and arrow.
So
Yeah.
already the plant has been, the seed has been planted that she wants to be like Hawkeye. You know what I mean? And so when we come into present day, we understand she's just a very accomplished young woman. She's a accomplished archer, martial artist, fencing. Like
Yep,
she's
fencing.
yeah, she's just an all around badass and everything. And so, yeah. And then we switch over to Clint. And this was the one, oh man, I had so much feelings over this scene.
Me
Want to talk
too.
to you about it. We switch over to Clint Hawkeye. We understand he's retired, right? This is 5 years after the incident, and he is actually taking his children into the city to go see Rogers the musical, which is a musical based on Captain America and the Avengers. And this specific scene that we're watching on stage is sort of a musical recreation of the Shatari attack of
Yeah, the Battle of New York.
Yeah. So what did you think about that scene?
No, I'm just like you. That was really hard to watch. Like, I thought going in that it was gonna be, like, just interesting to see the musical and it would be kind of funny and stuff, but to see his reaction
Mm,
to it and to see him kind of, like, reliving it almost
yeah,
while watching it, that was rough.
it was. It was. And because the thing is, like, that scene said quite a few things. And this is good writing because that scene to me established a couple of things.
Mhm.
Number one is this passage of time where, again, there's this prism of how we're looking at the Avengers, right? And now they've actually become like pop culture.
Yeah.
It's like a pop culture phenomenon. Like, oh, let's do a Broadway play about this really
Mhm.
destructive, day in history. You know what I'm saying? They would almost be like doing a 9/11 play. Like that would be a very
Mhm.
poor taste if you really think about it. You know what I mean? And so yeah, and it was just to kind of see like how it just feels like people have moved on. That's what it seems
Yeah.
like to me. Like people have just kind of moved on from this idea of like these mythic, powerful beings. It was like, oh, thank you for saving us from Thanos. Moving on. You know?
Yeah, and the other interesting thing about it is that his daughter could tell something was wrong. Like, the 2 boys were totally like we were talking about earlier, they were just kind of, like, totally into it and watching it, but she could tell, he was kinda going through it.
Yeah, and it was a and like you said, I mean, the Clint character to me, it's been like he's cool. He's not like my top three Avenger, but I
Mhm.
will say that the part in this play where the character who plays Black Widow comes out and sings, and
Mm.
my heart just hurt for him because then of course I think like most of us we're thinking back to Endgame where Natasha sacrificed herself.
Yep.
You know what I mean? And to that's a very traumatic event to go through, right? Like, oh, it's cool, like, oh, special, but like looking at it from a character point of view, like to see your friend say,
And
"Hey,
then he has to relive it all over again.
we live it all," and for them, it's just a joke. Because remember, these people don't know what happened on Vormir.
Nope.
They weren't there. You know what I'm saying? I mean, I'm sure Clint shared the details in his intel report, but they're not there. So like Black Widow to them is just like this cool redheaded assassin who just kills people. But Clint really knew who she was. Like they knew Black Widow while Clint knew who Natasha was. Let me say it that way.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah. So it was really sad to watch that. And then the other thing that was really interesting too is the fact that he has a hearing aid. So we now understand that he's disabled in some way or he's hearing impaired.
Yeah, that one really surprised me, and I was it got me thinking, I was like, I wonder, like, how long he's been wearing the hearing aid now.
Good
Like
question. Yeah. And what was really cool is they kind of did like a quick montage of like all the different explosions he had been through in the other
right.
movies. So I was like, yeah, it kind of makes sense that your hearing wouldn't be 100%.
But
So
did you notice a little later when they were
mhm.
outside the theater that his youngest son was signing to him?
Yes.
So is that because of his hearing aid, or is his youngest son deaf? Or, like,
I
that
don't
that kinda
know.
took me for a loop.
That's a really good question. I mean, I guess we'd have to take a look at the scene. Yeah, because he signs at him twice. He does that at the theater,
Mhm.
and then again,
And
uh,
he signs back.
and he signs back. So there's I was wondering if maybe their youngest son is deaf. Maybe that's something to look into. That's a really good question. I mean,
Yeah.
deaf representation. Well, we'll put a pin in that because we're going to talk about that too.
Yeah, I was about to say, like, that might be a way to show
Mhm.
early on, like, something that's gonna come up later.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we know we have deaf representation in the Eternals. We have Lauren Ridloff, the actress. She's an actress of color who is actually deaf. in real life. And by the way, I loved her performance in Eternals. I thought she was dope. I can't wait to see her
I
again.
can't wait to see it.
Yeah, yeah, she's really good. She's super fast. She's kind of like the Flash of the group,
Mhm.
right? But she just has like this spunkiness to her that I really like. So I'm really glad that Marvel is finally paying attention as far as like representation of disabled people and
Mhm.
actually casting, more importantly, casting disabled people to play these roles, right?
For
Because
sure.
there's this conversation about cripping up where able-bodied people are playing disabled roles. And I've always said this. You and I keep saying this, Robert. I'm pretty sure that when we look at these course corrections in the MCU, I know that they have their ear to the ground. They're seeing these conversations that we're having. Let me say that.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. People can, we can say everything we need to say about phase 1, 2, and 3. There's a lot of stuff that they didn't do that they should have done, but they are definitely course correcting right now.
Yeah, they are. They are. Yeah. So we kind of get a feeling of what um Clint has been experiencing since Endgame, and I'll tell you what, like just watching all these series to see where all these characters, where these Avengers are landing after Endgame, there's not a happily ever after, and I think that's a good thing, right? Because
Yeah,
the end of with Endgame, they vanquished Thanos and his second attempt at destroying the world. We had that beautiful memorial for Tony and everything, and then it was like, okay, well, what's next? And I like the fact that they are complicating things. Like like with Falcon and the Winter Soldier, while people may have, criticisms or feelings about it, I appreciated the fact, like that whole story with the GRC,
mhm.
with the global repatriate, like that's something that I would have never, that's not something I would have thought of, but it totally makes sense.
Totally makes sense.
Like you have millions or billions of people who disappear, and then when they come back after 5 years, how do you handle that?
Yeah, and you displace all the people that were left in their wake when they come back.
Right, right. So this idea of like, with the Carly and the flag smashers, and this idea of like, okay, well, now you're back and now you have to give up this land. Okay, bye bye. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
It's like we're not thinking about, or even that scene in WandaVision with Monica Rambeau where she is snatched up, right? She's, before, when the snap happens, she's at her mother's bedside because her mother was dying from
That
cancer.
was so good.
And then
A
she's,
return.
yeah, and that total chaos and her dysphoria.
Mhm.
Tiana Paris is that chick. Like the way she played it was just like I can't even imagine what kind of feelings you would have where it's literally like a blink, like 1 second you're there with your mother and the next she's gone. And it's been
And
5.
she's been gone a long time, yeah.
Yeah, so this feeling of a loss of equilibrium, of I don't quite fit in, I don't quite, like, I feel like the shows are really honing in on that, and I think that's really good. Because yeah, you have to think about like these consequences that are happening. Like Steve's gone, Iron Man, you know what I mean? Like all of these characters are gone, and then like the ones that remain, they're still there having to deal with like these day to day issues.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I think they're doing a good job with that. And so, um, basically, we understand that Kate gets kicked out of school because she's given a bet to turn on the church bell on the campus tower with an arrow, which she does. But then it actually destroys the bell tower.
Yeah, it seems like the vibrations
Oh
were
my
too
God.
much for the old bell tower.
Yes, and it was like you're just seeing it crumble in real time. You're like, oh my god, oh my god, oh my god, oh my
But
god.
her reaction to it was just so good.
She's
I
like,
mean, that basically was a good way to, like, show her personality.
absolutely, absolutely. And so she comes back home for the holidays, and then her mother is like, oh well, now we're gonna have to pay for this bell tower. I have to admit, her mom was a lot much cooler than I thought. Because I was like, if that was a black mama, you would not want to bring me back home. I know that.
Yeah, for sure.
So yeah, so basically, as part of her penance, Eleanor tells Kate, "Hey, you need to come to this holiday party with me," and that's where she meets, her mother's what's his name, Jack Duquesne. Duquesne.
Yeah,
Um,
I think so.
I've got my eye on him. Yeah, and that's when she finds out that her mother is engaged to this guy. And like you said, he comes from money. The Duquesnes have lots of money too. And at one point, Kate witnesses her mother having an argument with Jack's uncle,
The older man, right?
the older guy. Now, this goes back to what I was telling you, Robert, about how we're perceiving Eleanor. Because that scene where Kate is kind of observing this argument between her mother and father, as the viewers, we're looking at it through Kate's eyes. Now, if I see somebody arguing with my mama, I'm going to take my mama's side. I don't
Yeah.
know what's said, but it just seems like, hey, this man is being aggressive towards my mother. So my mom is the victim. Watch that scene again, Robert. I don't think it's that scene is not what we think it is. And I don't think
Well,
it's
you know what? Like when you were talking about it earlier, it got me thinking about that scene. And when she came out, she did not seem like she was threatened.
at
Like
all.
it seemed like she was the aggressor when she
Mhm.
came out. So I think you're totally right.
Yeah, and it was, remember what he said to her, what the uncle said to her. He said, "Oh, well, I know powerful people too."
Mhm.
So that means that Eleanor threw the gauntlet. Like she must have
Yeah.
flexed on him, and then he was like, "Well, I've got muscle too." So it's like, I'll put a pin in that. I'll put a pin in that.
Mhm. Yeah,
And
you've nailed this.
yeah,
She's 100% got to be the main villain.
yeah, she's part of something. We're gonna find out she's part of like some secret cabal, some part of organization. Like I'm just waiting. I'm just waiting because it's gonna be
Mhm.
good. And so while Kate is at this holiday party, somehow she follows her new, soon to be father in law into like this other part of the party. It's like the wine cellar. And it seems like there's this secret auction taking place. And one of the things that are auctioned is the auctioneer is like, oh, we got this from the rubble from the Avengers mansion from Endgame. It is actually the costume of Ronin, right? Because remember when
Mhm.
after the snap, Clint went rogue, so to speak, and he became Ronin, and he was just taking down all these, underground, sort of like these mobsters and whatever. And so it's the costume and the sword. And
Yep.
then all of a sudden, while this auction is going on, somebody busts in. It's a group of guys. They blow up the wall. And then Kate, while she's hiding because she was pretending to be a waiter, she snaps up the suit and the sword and puts it on and starts and kind of takes on the bad guys in order to protect the people so they could leave and everything. So I was just like, huh. Well, what did you think? I mean, because clearly this storyline of bringing back Ronin. What are your thoughts, or like, what are your theories on that? Because I feel like this was very intentful.
I'm kind of interested to see what they do with the Ronin part of this, just
Mhm.
because it's been such an issue ever since it happened
Yes.
in Endgame. So I'm kind of interested to see how they addressed it. As far as how it plays in this TV series, it was
Mhm.
really cool to get to see Kate fight for the first time. Really,
Yes. She's good.
uh, in this scene, yeah. And you could tell like she's not as highly trained as an Avenger, but you can tell she can take care of herself and she's really good at thinking on her feet.
She really
And
is.
that's one of the things that matches up with her comic book version of the character.
Mhm.
She's really good at thinking on the fly, and she kind of did that with the whole bell tower thing too, because her first shot didn't work,
Mhm.
and then she figured out real quick a way to get around what went wrong with her first shot and nailed it on the second shot.
She did.
So it was a good fight for displaying Kate's character and Kate's fighting style. It was really great for that.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. I was like, okay, girl, I see you. She's a really good, and then like you said, like she has so much raw talent. imagine when she actually is training. If
Yeah,
she's this
that's
good,
the best way to explain it. It's raw talent.
it's raw talent. Like when she's trained and has those, instincts honed, she's gonna be a force to mess with. I mean, she already
Hmm.
is. But yeah,
Yeah.
like I agree with you that she's definitely going to be one of the more prominent members of the new Avengers lineup and everything. So I mean, so far, who do we have? So we have the seeds. We've got Kate Bishop.
Hmm.
We already have. I mean, this was a quick cameo. He didn't really have a lot of speaking, but we were introduced to Eli Bradley, Isaiah Bradley's grandson in Falcon and the Winter Soldier, and we know that Eli Bradley is Patriot. He is also a member of New Avengers. So who else
Yep.
do we have? Kamala Khan.
Yep. And then the two kids in WandaVision.
And then who? Oh, the
The,
twins.
t- the
Yeah,
twins. Yep.
yes. So they're really laying the groundwork for this new team, right? Well, let me ask you a question really quick. Is the idea to make like a new Avengers and then a new Avengers, like are they trying to do like an Avengers where the new lineup will be like Captain Marvel and
I
uh
mean, they basically have the lineup of the Young Avengers. They have the twins. They
yeah,
have Kate. They
okay.
have Elijah.
Hmm.
Soon, when the Marvels come out, they'll have what's her name?
Monica Rambeau and
No, not Monica Rambeau. The young Puerto Rican girl,
oh uh oh shoot, why am I forgetting her name?
Miss America. Was it
America
Miss?
Chavez.
What's that?
Is that America Chavez?
Yeah, America Chavez. There we
Mhm,
go.
mhm. And you said they cast
Yeah,
the character already, right? They've already cast?
yeah. Oh, actually, she's coming in Doctor Strange.
Oh, that's a
Yeah, she's been cast.
that's a weird one. I was like, how's she gonna fit in Doctor Strange? But okay, I'm.
Well, she's from a different dimension, so that kind of makes sense.
Oh, you're right because she's not
Yeah,
from Earth. You're right.
right.
Right. You're right. Yeah.
And we still have Ironheart.
And Riri, and she's gonna be in and she's gonna be in Black Panther 2 and Wakanda Forever.
And yeah, that's right. She's introduced there, and she's supposed to be in the Iron Wars too, right?
Yeah.
The
Oh, I cannot wait. Oh yeah, the Don Cheadle series. Yeah.
Yeah, and she has her own series coming out too, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So
So
okay.
we got all those kids there.
Wow. So that's gonna be they'll really be tapping into like a more youthful market, but I think that's a good thing. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. That's interesting. Well, let me ask you a question then. So with this lineup that you're saying with Young Avengers, it seems to me that this would be the perfect time to bring a live action Miles Morales. Agree or disagree?
Oh, I totally agree, and I feel like now is it might happen after this Spider-Man movie.
Mm-hmm.
I
Yeah.
feel like this will be Tom's last one, and I think maybe we will get a Miles, or
Wow.
maybe I'm just hoping.
Yeah, no, I mean, especially like you said with the multiverse, he made that Miles may not actually be in the existing. He might be from another.
Yeah, just like America.
Hmm. I mean,
Yeah.
depending on how they do it. I mean,
And he's part of the Young Avengers in the comics, so it would make sense. But
seeing,
it's going to be interesting because I don't think they're getting rid of the Avengers. I think we will have an Avengers lineup still.
yeah. So you're thinking like Avengers and then a young and then like a teen Avengers,
Mhm.
sort of like
Yep.
you have the Justice League and Teen Titans. Like
Yep.
I feel like maybe that's what's happening. Okay, so then here's the other question: who's going to be okay between you and me? Like it seemed to me that the I could be wrong, but to me, it seemed like what Feige and the MCU were looking to do with this new phase of Avengers. Once they phased out the OGs, it seemed to me that the positions of leadership were going to be T'Challa and Captain Marvel or something like that. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's what I thought too.
And now with Chadwick gone and the fact that they are not going to recast, not to say that we can't have a Black Panther. I still because Black Panther is a title. Anybody, not anybody, but other people can step up into the suit. Um, I'm just wondering if that's going to still be the plan.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I'm still like trying to run through my head like who's
Hmm.
going to be the next. I mean, I guess it's Ant-Man, Wasp, Captain Marvel,
Hmm.
Black Widow. I mean, we have a new Black Widow.
We do. We do. And I mean, there's no spoilers here. It was announced in casting that Yelena, that Florence Pugh did shoot several episodes of Hawkeye. And
Oh
we
yeah.
and we know this because when we saw the ending credits, that post credit scene in Black Widow, Yelena is visiting Natasha's grave, and then Madam Hydra hands her a file and was like, "This is the man who's responsible for your sister's death." And when Yelena opens the file, it's a picture of Clint.
Yeah,
So
we'll have to stick a pin and revisit that when we get to the end of episode 2 because I feel like there's a connection there.
I absolutely agree. Yeah, like they're really like I'm really curious to see how this is going to play out. I was actually just watching you know how Disney Plus has the assembled series, it's like the behind the scenes docs of each of the Marvel properties. So I was
Mhm.
actually watching the behind the scenes of Black Widow, or the making of Black Widow, and it seems to me like there's definitely been a handing of the baton to Yelena, uh,
Yeah.
to be sort of like the new Black Widow, so to speak. And I really like her. I really loved her in the Black Widow movie. She had great chemistry with Scarlett Johansson. And one of the things that I really liked about the movie was the fact that how she would make fun of Natasha. Because you know, like you said earlier, there was an over sexualization of the character when it was first introduced, and
Yeah.
and what I loved about Black Widow is I think Scarlett finally had a chance to kind of clap back, so to speak, right? And through Yelena, she was like, well, when you land, why do you do that? Why do you land
Yeah.
like this? And there's actually a scene where Yelena does the same pose, and she's like, yuck, yuck, yuck. I love her. I was like, I'm sold. I love Florence Pugh.
Me too. I wasn't sure how I was gonna feel about her, but she's so different than
She's
Scarlett Johansson's Black Widow that it's really
beautiful.
cool.
Yeah, so I think she's definitely going to bring a new energy to the Avengers, you know, if she comes to the fall. But it'll be interesting to see what the dynamic between her and Clint will be, because now she's sort of, I'm guessing she's bent on revenge. She's got it in her head that Clint is responsible for Natasha's death. And
Yeah.
yeah, a showdown between Clint and Kate and then Yelena is going to be quite interesting
It's
because
gonna
she's
be real interesting.
very formidable. She's very formidable. And also throwing this out there, but before we go back to Hawkeye, when I was watching the documentary and the ending, they were talking about like that ending when all of the other Black Widows are released from their mental hold.
Mhm.
Seems to me y'all got a whole series waiting right there of
Yeah.
lethally trained assassins who now have a conscience and control and autonomy. What do you do with these women? Like, it seems to me like I would love to see like a widow series of some sort. Like, you know,
Yeah,
there.
that would be interesting, and we still got the Taskmaster,
Yes,
running around and
yes, we
everything.
do. Yeah, you know what I mean. So you got all these powerful women. Like, you don't just ignore them. They're, you know, like they're in the world. I would assume that they would want to do something to kind of make up for their wrongs or something. So, but yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing uh, Florence Pugh in the Hawkeye series and how that showdown with Hawkeye is going to happen. The other thing is, fast forwarding to episode 2, uh, the last shot of episode 2, we understand, you know, Hawkeye and Kate were kind of on the run from the, what do they call them? The something mafia?
They
Sweats.
called him the
The
tracksuit mafia.
So throughout episode 2, they've been trying to get, you know, get revenge on Kate or whatever, and Hawkeye and Clint, and then towards the end of episode 2, they are captured. Well, first Clint is captured, and then Kate busts through the ceiling, window ceiling, to try to save him, and it doesn't quite work. God bless her. I was like, girl, you watched too many action movies. That didn't work out for you. And then the two of them get tied up. You know what I mean? And so the end of
Uh-huh.
episode 2, because remember, before they got Clint, remember they said something about that she wants to.
Yeah.
So I was like, who the hell are they talking? Who, she? And then that last shot, we see one of the members of the tracksuit mafia goes into the back and is like, hey, you know, they're tied up, you know, you can come out or whatever. And then we see this woman, clearly of like Latino or Native American descent, and we understand that that is actually Maya Lopez, who also is known as Echo, and who also is a deaf
Yeah.
hero
Mhm.
of sorts. And so I gotta say, Robert, I was really, really excited to see that last scene. I'm kind of, what did you?
Me too. I knew Echo was in the series, but, like, it still took me by surprise.
And if I remember correctly, the actress who plays her is, I think her name is Alakwa Cox.
Yeah.
And the other thing that's so cool is that she is actually deaf in real life. So
Mhm.
again, kudos to Marvel for really making that search. And like I said, I was like, if Disney could do it, if you know they could take the time to do that, then I would hope that other studios and directors would take the time to do that. Because Kevin Feige was just very much like the Disney mandate, or I should say the Marvel mandate was, we need a. It was very specific. We need a deaf actress of Native American heritage because she is Cheyenne. Her father was a Cheyenne mobster or whatever, or from the Cheyenne tribe, and so
Yeah.
yeah, and so they found her, and I saw an interview with her. She was like, I don't really have acting experience. You know what I mean? She had done some Broadway, like some high school plays or, whatever. But I really appreciated that they did that, that they were like,
Yeah.
this is who we need to play this role.
And she's an amputee too, right?
Yes, I saw that. I was just like,
Yeah.
oh, wow. So, wow. It's going to be really interesting to see her fight scenes because we know she can fight.
Yeah, I mean, and that's kind of what I wanted to tie to
Mhm.
Yelena,
Go ahead. Mhm.
because, I mean, Echo's power is copying other people's movements,
Lord,
which kinda ties to the whole Taskmaster thing, you know?
oh boy. This is going to be interesting. And of interest, I was, doing a quick read on the Maya Lopez character, and I wanted to throw this at you. We understand in the comics, Maya Lopez is the adopted daughter of Kingpin. Um,
Yeah, she sure is.
yeah, yeah. So the backstory is Kingpin actually murdered Maya's father. He was a mobster as well, and then the father's dying last wish was, "Please raise my daughter as your own." And so Kingpin surprisingly did take her in and raised her as his own, gave her all the, whatever. She went to all these gifts. They realized at first they weren't sure they thought something was wrong with her, but she's not. She's deaf and she's mute, but she's brilliant. And like you said, her mimicking skills kind of came through when she was younger. Like, I think she just learned to play the piano in like a day or something like that. Like, she picks things up really, really quick. So my thing was like, okay, so if they're going to follow this origin story of her being Kingpin's adopted daughter, because clearly she's got muscle, she's got
Mhm.
some sort of underworld connection to
Ties,
set
yeah.
the tracksuit mafia to be working to her. So seems to me, I don't know,
Are we gonna get
could we potentially see
Vincent D'Onofrio?
yeah, could we possibly see a Kingpin cameo? And also, would it be possible to see a Daredevil cameo? Because we know in the comics,
Listen.
Daredevil. I'm just saying.
Listen, if we get Vincent D'Onofrio in this joint,
Mhm.
oh, this would be so good.
Yeah, yeah.
That character is so good, like, of all the Netflix MCU stuff, that character is
Mhm.
so good, and I would love to see him back in the MCU.
I do. I mean, listen, I think anything is possible because of the fact that they brought Evan Peters to play Quicksilver. Now,
Mhm.
mind you, remember, Quicksilver was from the Fox property of X-Men, but integrated him into Disney. Seems to reason, why not? Why could they not hire Charlie Cox back? Why could they not bring Vincent D'Onofrio back? I mean, like, what's the purpose of like recasting these characters where people already have an attachment to the actors who have played these characters? Is my question.
That that
And
would be so g like, if that happens, that's like the ultimate, like
oh, it's gonna.
that's the ultimate.
I think so too. I think so too. And because remember the theory, at least for me, when I saw the ending of Far From Home, And then watching No Way Home, we understand that Peter's identity has been revealed and he's on the run. I was like, hey, this seems like a perfect opening for Charlie Cox. I mean, Peter's going to need a lawyer, right?
Mhm.
Who better than Matt Murdock? Because we know that Matt Murdock has a history of representing superheroes. You know what I'm saying?
And
And
it seems like it's been the rumor mill for, like, the last year that he's gonna show up in something.
well, if it's not No Way Home, then I think this Hawkeye is the perfect home for him. I
Mhm.
think that would be really, really cool. And like, yeah, so it'll be interesting to see like if they keep that same origin story and if they're gonna bring, because I mean when I was watching Hawkeye, that world that they've created in New York, I can see a Daredevil. I can see a Matt Murdock living there, and I can also see a Kingpin in that same.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah. So I'm really excited. So I guess oh god, so when are these new episodes airing? New every Wednesday or every Friday?
I was gonna ask you, I'm guessing every Wednesday?
I guess so. So yeah, so it's gonna be interesting to see like how they're going to handle the Maya Lopez character. Because some people are like, oh well, she's not gonna be Echo, and I was like, well, that don't make no sense. Of course they're gonna make her Echo.
Well,
Like,
I mean, they just had her surrounded by a bunch of speakers at in
oh,
that end scene.
she did.
So, yeah. Yeah, like, if you look at that end scene, there's, like, a bunch of, like, hi-fi speakers going off in there, so if that doesn't tell me she's Echo, nothing
Yeah,
does.
yeah. I
It's
was
like she's, like, feeling all the vibrations from the speakers.
like, oh, I didn't even catch that.
Yeah, look at that scene again. It's just like a wall of, like, speakers.
Yeah, that's gonna be interesting. Yeah, so for me, I'm invested in this show now. I'm like, okay, the first two episodes, I was like, okay, this is pretty good. I had very low expectations, but but again, it's the casting and the writing seem to be hitting the right tone so far. So I'm really interested in now, knowing about Echo and then knowing that Yelena's going to be coming in. Like we're going to be getting some really interesting stories. And I love that we have this show that's so female centric too, which I think is cool.
Yeah, and it's only 6 episodes, right?
Yeah, so they got a lot of storytelling.
So next episode, we'll be, like, halfway through, so
So,
I mean, they are longer ones,
so it seems
but,
to me that Yelena will probably show up in episode 3 or 4, maybe. I don't
that would be my guess.
actually. Let me look up Florence Pugh. They usually will tell you like how many episodes she's done. Let's see, because they really kept the shooting of that kind of super secret.
They
Um,
did.
okay, so all right, all filmography. So she is supposed to be in Hawkeye. She's in 4 episodes. Yup. So she's showing up at episode 3. So
Yeah, she gotta show up next episode.
listen. So I think what's going to happen. This is my theory. My theory is they're going to set up Echo and Yelena to sort of be like these antagonists for Kate and Clint, right, respectively.
Mhm.
And I think what's going to happen. I could be wrong. My theory is that once the big bad is revealed, who I think is Eleanor, Kate's mother, I think there's going to be a team up of sorts. I think there's going to be a team up of Kate, of Echo, and Yelena. Kind of,
100%. 100%, you nailed it.
yeah, I think that's what's going to happen. It's going to be like, oh, yeah, you thought she was the bad. No, she's the bad one. And
Yeah.
so it's going to kind of be cool to kind of see this girl power.
Yeah,
Uh,
I think we're gonna get, like, 2 episodes of them being, like, antagonists for Kate, and then the last 2, they'll be teaming up against her mother.
they are, yeah, and the thing is, I can actually see Kate and Yelena being friends only because of the fact of if Eleanor ends up being the villain that gives her a broken home, right? Like her father's gone now, her mother, she doesn't have her mother, so to speak. And I think
Mhm.
Yelena could definitely relate to that, you
Yeah,
know,
for sure.
of having this idea of this family and then it's kind of blown up. And especially now that she doesn't have, uh, Natasha was like really her sister, right? And now she doesn't really have anybody. So I think that I can kind of see them bonding over that and probably
And
like developing a friendship.
yeah, and then we get Hawkeye and Black Widow again.
Oh my goodness.
Isn't that
Oh my
the
god.
symmetry is just so amazing.
I didn't even think about that, Robert. That's right. Because they're each stepping in for the other. Yeah, yeah, and I would love to see that because I definitely would like to see as much as like I said, I love the male female platonic representation in the MCU. I would definitely like to see some strong female friendships.
Yeah, and just to see it, like,
Hmm.
just to naturally, like, come together like this is
Yeah,
just, like, so cool.
I think so too. Yeah, that's gonna be really interesting. Yeah, I'm really excited to see where this is gonna go. So, well, thank you, Robert.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I'm excited to see the rest of these now.
Me too. So we will be reviewing. We'll be back later this week to review episode 3. Are they dropping one episode at a time? I hope so.
Yeah, they're one at a time.
They
They
wanna-
dropped, like, the first 2, and now they're gonna be one at a time.
Awesome. All right. Yeah. So we'll be back to recap episode 3, and we'll see if any of our theories, pan out. Well, thank you for listening to another episode of the Spectrum Lounge. See you on the other side.